Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of AllDay Edify. I'm Corey, and this is my lovely wife, Tasha. We are your hosts.
Yes, thanks for joining us again. And today we have an exciting show for you. Our topic today is steering clear of distractions, procrastination, and fear.
Absolutely, babe. This is an awesome topic. I love this. These three words, these are three big words. And if we're not careful, these three words will hinder us from being able to achieve the success that we are purposed to walk in.
Absolutely. I believe that this reaches home with everyone. We all live in pursuit of our destiny or our life's destination.
Absolutely. And so we should actually have a visual. When we talk about these things, we should actually have a visual of ourselves, not only just us, but our loved ones and our family members in the vehicle with us as we ride down the path of pursuing our destiny, achieving the success that we're purposed to have.
Right. But along the path, we should be mindful of some things.
I agree. And so when we were putting this together, we talked about that, right? We talked about how important it is for us to be mindful of both the controllable and the uncontrollable things that we face. The things that are unavoidable for us, and then the things that we do have the ability to avoid. Now, of those, if you could please share with us, babe, an idea of what some of those things might be.
Yep. So we talked about two things. One of the things is the value of everything you've learned from what's in your rearview mirror. And number two, the fact that if you can discern clues and indicators of what lies ahead, you could prevent yourself from driving into a traffic jam, a road construction, or possibly taking detours as needed.
Man, I love that analogy, babe. I could just again have that visual of traveling down the road, seeing a detour or roadblock or something like that. But the rear view mirror stuff, share a little bit more of that with us.
Well, in the natural, when you're looking in the rear view, just when you're in traffic, when you're passing cars, you can kind of see what goes on behind you. I know for
Hmm.
me personally, I was hit in the back, in the accident,
Oh
and so
yeah, I remember
I'm
that.
always looking in my rear view mirror because I just know that I'm always nervous if somebody's driving too fast behind me, because I've been hit in the back. So, I'm always looking in my rearview mirror at what's going on behind me. And so some of the other things that, looking in our rear view in our lives is potentially some mistakes that we've made, some bad decisions, or even some wrong turns.
Right, right. And if the thing about it is, I love that analogy. If we can look back in our rear view mirror and see it, that means that it was just that recent. It wasn't that long ago that we just passed this period or this particular section of our path. So we should be able to look back. It's fresh in our memory. We should be able to see how it is that, man, we just got it wrong or we just made a mistake or there's something that we can learn from. If we just focus on that, we'll be all right. You agree?
Yes, I definitely agree with that because distractions are a very big deal. And we just can't get that time back once it's gone, babe.
Absolutely. Time waits for nobody. And we talk about it a lot. It's important that we have a sense of urgency whenever we're moving along the path of our destiny. And so the thing that we have to keep in mind is that when we're moving along that path, again, I gave the visual of not only me being in the vehicle driving myself, but I got my family with me. I got my loved ones with me. And so if I'm taking the wrong turns or allowing myself to be distracted or something like that or whatever, I'm basically holding them hostage on this path.
Absolutely. And so when we're talking about distractions, not all distractions are bad. Okay, so I do know that, sometimes we put distractions in our lives on purpose to prevent negative things in our lives or to prevent someone from getting hurt yourself or just because you know of a situation. So you may potentially put a distraction in your life so that way you can avoid certain things. So we're definitely not saying that all distractions are bad. But for the purpose of this segment, this show right here, we're discussing distractions, how they can hinder us from achieving success, pursuing our goals, and reaching our destiny. And so when we were putting this together, we had ran across this quote, and it says that dismiss distractions, part of being successful is refusing to allow the distractions on the journey to stop you from reaching your destination.
Absolutely, man. I love this quote. And like you said, is all distractions are not bad. There are some that, we can't control, but there are some that we can control. The uncontrollable ones we can't dwell on, but the ones that we can control, we have to be mindful of the fact that they could cause us to respond, in some kind of fear or procrastination if we're not careful. But I love this quote because it shows us that we have to learn from our distractions and the detours that we face. And if we learn from them, this allows us to get right back on the path of pursuing our destination.
Absolutely. And so, what are some examples that you can think of when we talk about procrastination? What are some examples of procrastination, babe?
Well, I think some of the ones that come to mind are the fact that, like when you think about like your physical health, we always, we get close to, the period of the year where you talk about the fourth quarter or going into the start of the first quarter of a new year. People will say, well, the beginning of the year, I'm going to start this new, workout regimen, or I'm going to change my diet in this way. So I'm thinking physical. I'm thinking also dietary as well as mental, all these different things that we can have an opportunity to work on improving them. But if we say that we're going to set a target up the road for getting to them, chances are that's a form of procrastination. We're preventing ourselves from implementing some change right then and there.
Absolutely, babe. I totally agree with you. And we actually we did a recently we did a mental health event and
Right.
segment where we talked about how it is possible to neglect mental health issues and stop progress. And as far as physical health, like you mentioned, everything from our exercise regimen to our diet deserves timely attention. And I know that you mentioned that. And so I know you mentioned too with the health. And so I do know that with women, when we have to do our annual exams like breast examinations and things like that, we want to make sure that we're actually, going to get checked up, making sure that, our health is okay, getting all of those exams done, because not only is it good for us to know, but it's good for our family to know, what's going in our lives, because we're not just living for ourselves. We may have children, grandchildren, and things like that. And of course, we all want to know what's going on so that way we can kind of help with what's going on with your health and be of assistance. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I do know that some people may be in fear of wanting to know what results are, what test results are, because they don't want to know if they may potentially have cancer or something like that. But procrastinating could potentially not help with the process if there is something going on, because you're putting it off. And so it's better to know sooner than later. Then it's progressed to a certain extent to where there is no let's do this to get it resolved or that to get it resolved. So that's at the procrastination level to where you might want to get that checked out. And I do know that you mentioned the exercise regimen and things like that. A lot of people make New Year's resolutions,
Yep.
like you're saying, I'll put it off and I'll put it off. And so those are some things that we might want to just continue to keep on doing. And so, what are some other examples of procrastination that you can think of?
Well, I know that one thing that comes to mind is that I do know that, in the examples that you talked about, it applies in both other areas as well as in the areas that we've already mentioned. Out of the areas that we've already mentioned, I believe that, and I said it before, you can hold your family hostage basically by not making a decision to be proactive or to take action or being stuck in a particular holding pattern.
I know that
So
you had, I know that you gave an example, or you were telling me about an example about someone going to the doctor.
yeah, on the radio, yeah, I was telling you about that on the radio show. But the one time I was, recently I was listening, and there was a gentleman who said the exact same thing. And I guess what I was getting at there is talking about how people in your family and it's hereditary. Sometimes you can have certain high risk hereditary things going on in your body that is hereditary, and if you don't get it checked out, then all of a sudden when you do find out, it's too late to be proactive. Well, there was one gentleman who was saying that he had some bad, so this is a twofold thing. He had some bad experience in his past that prevented him from wanting to have an optimistic approach in going to the doctor. So again, it's twofold. Number one, there was something that he probably needed to have some mental health support in that particular area of whatever had taken place in his past, but it was preventing him from going to the doctor. And he later on found out, after he finally goes to the doctor and gets a checkup, he later on finds out that he has prostate cancer. Okay, so that's two different things. Avoiding and procrastinating about going to get your checkup, and procrastinating about getting mental health support about something that took place in your past. And it comes back to kind of cut like a two-edged sword that now you find out you have prostate cancer or some other sickness in your body, and you have a shorter window of being able to get some attention to try to change that pattern of that physical health ailment that is going on in your body.
Wow.
Yeah. But in answering your other question, though, babe, you were asking me what are some other examples, and one of them that came to mind for me was your biggest pet peeve, your favorite, which is time management. All right, procrastination. When you look at not only your physical and mental health, but from a time management perspective, which allows you to be preventive, then you're messing around and you're missing opportunities to keep things in order for yourself, to where now you can really stay in tune along that path, that journey towards your destiny and your destination. Why? Because you're not managing your time properly.
Absolutely. And so, yes, I do admit that, I am very task driven, and I'm always focused on time management, mostly because, I juggle many schedules and things like that. And so, and being in administration for over 15 years, it's always, my first thing is to try to manage my time. And I don't like to be late to anything. And so, I try to always have the mindset to control the things that I can control. So when things do come up, I'm not such a stickler on time because I've already organized the things that I could control. And so, yes, time management is a very big deal to me. And, it stresses me out sometimes when I'm not as organized as I like to be, because things come up a lot of times. And so, it's just I would like to be more organized with the things that I can control.
Okay, so that's putting it mildly, babe. You are very aggressive when it comes to time management, and there's nothing wrong with that because we like to work together and help each other out. For me personally, I'm real big on things like, again, having a sense of urgency to, because I believe early bird gets the worm, and I'm staying on top of things like exercising. But you keep me in order and organized because you have major anxiety when time management is not being properly implemented.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, but I'm trying, I'm trying to I guess, wean down on it a little bit, but it's just such a big deal to me. And, I just really, really love to be organized because, I have so much going on,
Gotcha.
trying to keep multiple schedules and just trying to, focus on, the task at hand. And so, being a taskmaster and making sure that things are in order, and, so that's just, real near and dear to my heart. And so, yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I invite it. I welcome it. I'm not always as submissive to the aggression that you apply to it, but I'm getting better at it because I know it helps me. Just like I know some of the things that are pet peeves for me, and I give a lot of attention to. You embrace it sometimes because we know we helping each other. Another thing, though, that comes to mind as we're talking about this, and we look at the two, though, when we look at the difficulty sometime in overcoming or having some bounce back when you're dealing with distractions, or if you're dealing with procrastination. What are some of the differences in them, and which do you think is tougher to recover from?
So when you talk about distractions and procrastination, the difference is, to me, is when you have a distraction, you've already started, whether it's the task, the goal, or whatever it is, you've started it already. So you know where it's going. And so you can kind of gauge if it's working or if it's not working, if you need to change your approach. But if you're procrastinating with something, you haven't even gotten started. You don't know what's going to happen with the task or the goal or whatever you need to do. And so procrastinating, to me, I think is harder to recover from than a distraction, because now with the distraction you know what direction to go into. And not only that, when you're procrastinating, I also feel like it's not always bad. Sometimes in procrastination it could be out of fear. It could be, fear out of the unknown, like I don't want to get started because I don't want to be disappointed at the outcome. What are people going to say? Or it might not, if it's something that you really want to do, it might not pan out the way that you want it to be. But sometimes, you just have to go ahead and just go out there because you need to see what happens with it, because you would never know. And so the fear of the unknown sometimes could be based on that procrastination.
Absolutely. And I agree 100%. I think that sometimes people procrastinate for those reasons. They procrastinate because they've allowed themselves to be distracted. And because they've allowed themselves to be distracted, there is a consequence that goes with that distraction. That consequence is now all of a sudden you're hesitant, you're indecisive, you're trigger shy. You know what I mean? You're believing that I'm going to make a mistake, something is going to go wrong. Sometimes we get out there and we make mistakes and we find ourselves going back to the drawing board, right? Which is a different topic altogether, because we're going to give some attention to that in another episode. But we don't want to have to start all over. And again, we find ourselves sometimes stuck in the mud. So instead of, just, pulling up our bootstraps and getting out there and getting it done, we get hesitant, and because we've gotten distracted or because we have done something wrong, and it all of a sudden breeds fear. It prevents us from moving forward because we are now functioning in fear that we're either going to make a mistake or that we are going to find ourselves having more work to do because we've procrastinated and we've gotten behind. Maybe we look at and compare ourselves to people, which is not a healthy thing to do. But sometimes it works as a motivation that we want to keep up with some of our peers or some of our colleagues or our contemporaries, people who we know, we start off at a class, for example, at the same time as some people. Some people are giving more attention to doing their homework, staying on track, and we procrastinate on getting it done. So when test time comes, we're functioning in fear, thinking and believing that I'm not ready, I'm not going to get the results I want, I'm going to end up having to take this class all over again. And so I think that happens a lot, babe, that because we procrastinate or we allow ourselves to be distracted, when test time comes or when it's time for us to deal with the reality of that situation that we're in, then all of a sudden the consequence of that procrastination and those distractions kick in, and it result in us functioning in fear.
And that's a good segue, because that is our last topic that we're going to discuss is fear. So what about fear? That's another vital and potentially damaging pitfall in our focus to reach our goals and destination.
Well, I do believe that fear can rob you of your expectation. Fear can rob you of your zeal or your excitement or your passion about something. Fear can prevent you from being able to function with the level of optimism that you should have. And the reason it's there, again, we just said it, is because we've allowed ourselves to be distracted. We've allowed ourselves to be distracted and we've gotten off track. So momentum is working against us in those situations. If you're not being distracted now, you got some motion going in the right direction and you're not stopping your flow with that. You know what I mean? And so now all of a sudden you feel confident when you're faced with challenging situations. If you get distracted, all of a sudden you have less momentum. It's actually going in the wrong direction. If you procrastinate, all of a sudden it's difficult for you to see yourself being able to move successfully towards whatever your goal or your destination is, because you haven't even left home yet. You know what I'm saying? So there's no way that you're going to feel like, oh, I'm going to get there. No, you're not going to feel like you're going to reach that destination because you ain't even left home yet. You know what I mean? And so I think that fear has that impact on us.
And also when you talk about fear, because you actually use fear when you talked about procrastination. Sometimes you talked about the homework and things like that. Sometimes when people are in fear, they get out of that fear when they are competing with somebody, because sometimes people are motivated when they're in fear and they see somebody else going out and putting themselves out there, achieving the goals that they want to achieve with no money, no resources, or anything like that. And they like, you know what? I got faith. I'm putting it all on the table. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna make it happen. And so when some people think about their fear, they like, well, they doing it, and they don't have this, that, or the other. And so now I'm gonna go on out there and get out of fear, and I'm gonna go ahead and try to do these dreams, goals, or aspirations that I want to do, because why can't I do what they doing? What do you think about that?
Yep. And so you talked about, that's a good example, babe. You talked about how earlier you talked about how there is a healthy form of distraction. How we can embrace a distraction that takes our mind off of things that we want to forget or we don't want to think about. That's a healthy form of a distraction that works to our benefit. Just like in this case, fear can work to your benefit. You are using the fact that you don't want to fail. You're using the fact that you don't want to finish last. You're using the reality that you're going to be ridiculed and looked at and talked about in a negative way. And you fear that more than staying stuck in a position or a holding pattern where you're not taking some kind of action. So that fear then pushes you to say, you know what? I'm not going to be finishing last. I'm not going to be talked about in a negative way by everybody, all my haters, all my naysayers who think that I can't achieve some kind of success. This person was hating on me, and they competing against me, and I'm definitely not finishing behind them. You know what I mean? And so I agree 100%. That's a good analogy. A good way to look at it is that both fear and distractions can work out as benefits for us if we allow them to, and if we have the right mindset in how we approach and look at them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in wrapping up, this segment, the three topics that we talked about, is the first one was distractions. And so kind of how we summed it up was time waits for nobody.
Absolutely, babe. Time waits for nobody. The early bird gets the worm, my granddad used to say all the time. So he let us know that if I call on you and I need you to do something to help me, you better be ready to go, or I ain't coming back for you. The same thing applies in life or with our goals or some of the things that we face along our path to our success. We can assume or think and believe that we're the only person that's qualified to do something, but we get distracted, and now all of a sudden we are looking and somebody else has surpassed us. We're just a candidate to do that. But somebody else can present themselves as a better candidate to do it because they're staying focused. And now all of a sudden they've got some momentum going in their direction. And guess what? We look a lot less attractive because we've allowed ourselves to get distracted and we have not gotten back on the path of moving towards our destination. So we need to understand and be very aware of time management, right, babe? Time management. Absolutely.
Time management. Absolutely. Yep. And so I know the second thing we talked about was procrastination, and how we kind of summed that up was just get started. Don't procrastinate, just get started.
Yep, absolutely. You sound like MC Hammer. But I agree, babe. Sometimes we might get to the point to where it's intimidating. We talked about that in another discussion. It can be intimidating, the tall task that is ahead of us or that lies before us, or the road that we're looking at, and we look and we like, man, this is an 8-hour drive, or it's going to take me so long to get to my destination. How many classes do I have to sit in? How many textbooks do I have to read? How many tests do I have to take in order to get to my destination? But if we just put one foot in front of the other, one step at a time, and just keep moving towards that goal, all of a sudden, like you said, if we get off track, all of a sudden it's easier to recover. Why? Because we've been moving in the right direction versus staying at home, not getting started, and we're sitting and saying like, oh, the road is going to be so difficult. You don't know if you're going to have a clear path or you're going to run into road construction until you get moving in that direction.
Absolutely. And so the last thing that we touched on was fear. And kind of how we sum that up is don't fear failure. Just go ahead and do it. Don't fear failure.
I agree 100%. Guess what? There was a quote, and you and I were talking about this before. There was a quote where I believe it was Wayne Gretzky, where he said, "I miss 100% of the shots that I don't take."
Wow.
So that
That's
means
real
that
deep. That's deep.
yeah, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I motivate myself to working out like that. That if I only got a half hour or 20 minutes of workout in me today, that's 100% more than had I not gotten up at all and did something. So we prevent ourselves from being successful when we're stuck in fear. So if we can move outside of fear and not worry about failing, not worry about falling short of what our goal is, I might want to do an hour workout. But if I can only get 15 or 20 minutes in, guess what? That's a lot more than had I not gotten up off the couch at all. And so we should not fear falling short of the goals that we set for ourselves or the targets that we want to reach. Just do it. Just go ahead, move forward. Don't worry about falling short of it. They said if you shoot for the moon, you will land among the stars, right?
Right, absolutely. And so, yes, this was a really good topic today. And so, we're running out of time. And so, this, I thank you all for joining us today for another episode, of AllDay Edify, where our aim is to uplift, inform, and enlighten you.
All day, every day.
Do you provide human services? Are you an entrepreneur that contributes to society? Do you have access to tools and resources that facilitate growth and development? Come be a guest on our show. You can email us at alldayedify@gmail.com or send us a message on our Facebook page at AllDay Edify.